Well, thank you, Kim. And thanks to all of you who might be out there. To some of you, this might feel a little bit like a refresher, and others, it may feel like some new stuff. I'm going to try to engage you in some conversation around program planning and proposal writing. So I will encourage you to use the chat and make sure your chat is set to, let's see, what does it say here in Zoom? Everyone. So set your chat to everyone and pull your chat up on the screen so that you can see it. There'll be a little bit of Q&A kind of going on here. So as I said, some of you, this is going to feel a little like program planning, because it is program planning. If you do a nice job planning a program, whether you're writing a proposal or talking to your local board or talking to other stakeholders, it's kind of all part of the same thing. So, and once you get into the swing of doing it this way, you'll wonder, it'll just help you articulate what it is that you're doing in your program and proposal writing. So let's see if I figure out how to move this forward. There we go. Okay, so my first question for you is just kind of a raise of the hands, which you can do if you have your participant box open. I want you to raise your hand if you have written a proposal for the first part of that question. So raise your hand if you have written a proposal before. And I know a bunch of you have, so let's see. Who else? There we go. Greg and Amanda. Who else out there has written a proposal before? Okay, and Jen. Let's see, who else we got here? Anybody? All right, so keep your hands up there. And then let me ask of the rest of you, who has planned a program? All right, so we should see more hands go up now. Who out there has planned a program? Okay, there we go. Excellent. Others? We planned a program for cooperative extension, or maybe a volunteer organization that you're part of, or something for a school project. Have you ever planned a program? All right. My guess is that all of us in some capacity or another have, even whether we've written a proposal or not, we've been part of planning a program. All right, so I want to engage your mind around what you have done when you planned a program. So at this point, I'd like for you to chat in. You can put your hands down and chat in. What have you done? What was your approach when you were planning a program or writing a proposal? And what did you do first? So first step, what kinds of things did you do? So if you can chat that in, we're going to just try to get your head wrapped around some of this stuff, and also help others that are on the call on the Zoom to think about some things as well. Okay, so from Jessica, start with a goal or a need. Excellent. What else have you done as you're thinking about a proposal or a program, writing a program, developing a program, getting ready to talk to other people, identifying the outcome? Excellent. All right, decide what you want your outcomes to be. All right, what's the goal, the outcome? Right, anything else? Engaging stakeholders. Excellent. Who are the partners? Who's the audience? You guys are good. Investigating partnerships and support. All right, okay, so your head is in the right place. Thank you for doing that. I've got a few of these Q&As, and I hope that you'll be with me on this. So as we're thinking about developing a program, as we're thinking about writing a proposal, maybe there's an RFP that you found, and your head starts to get around what is it that we need to do? What kind of needs are out there in a community? Who else is in this with me? And how can we create something that's going to really meet a need? So that sounds good. All right, let's see. There we go. So if you've taken part in any of the program development coursework or the program development leadership cohort, you're going to recognize this as the first step in our program development model, which is assessing needs. So that's often the first step is we're thinking about a proposal. Sometimes it's not because we're jumping in when that's already been done, or we need to be called to action in some other capacity. But step one is often assessing the needs and really kind of understanding what's going on there. And if we are conducting a needs assessment, that'll help you to make some decisions, like determining what those outcomes are, what your objectives are, what your audience looks like, and also visualize that roadmap ahead. So step one is a good step is to assess the needs that are out there. And another way of looking at that is kind of doing your homework, right? So stepping back, really digging in, doing a little bit of research, and figuring out all of those things that you said. Who are the stakeholders? Who are your partners? Starting to talk to people, digging in, doing some searching, Google searching, talking to other partner organizations and figuring out what kind of work that they've done. And we call all of that stuff a needs assessment. So here's what I hope that we can walk away with, some or part of these things at the end of our little hour today, is that you'll have a better understanding of what a needs assessment is, that it doesn't have to be a huge investment of time. When I think about it as doing my homework, it's a little less overwhelming to me personally than thinking about all of the processes that might be considered a needs assessment. So I'll kind of leave that with you. All of us get overwhelmed by some of the parts and pieces sometimes, but if whatever you need to do to wrap your head around making it a reasonable investment of time, walking through and assessing needs and understanding the needs of a community is really going to help you to better articulate what it is that you want to do. So I hope that you'll also walk away understanding that there are some very consistent ways that you can get to your needs assessment, and that if you have multiple methods or 2 or 3 things that you are doing to assess the needs, you're going to be in a better place. You can better articulate what the needs are, and other people are going to recognize that you have approached something not just from your head, but really thought about the community needs that are out there. You've done your homework, essentially. And I hope that you'll walk away understanding that when you take the time to understand the needs of the community, it's not just for you and for what you're writing, but the other thing that you have left is you've left your mark on a whole other group of people that are going to understand. You're kind of planting the seed for what you're doing. So whether you are writing a proposal or developing a plan for whatever's next for your work, as you've talked with people and as you've explained what it is that you are intending to do, you're setting some expectations for those potential partners as they begin to wrap their heads around what they want to do with you. So that's my hope, is that you'll walk away with a few of these things. Understanding that needs assessment doesn't have to be a huge investment. Understanding that multiple methods is going to make your work a little bit, just enrich it a little bit more. And also understand that taking the time to do it will bring other people along the process with you. All right, so on the website that has the information about this particular webinar, I put a few resources, and we'll take a look at that at the very end. Kim, maybe you can help me make sure that we have time to do that, going back to that website. But one of the resources that I put on there is this one-pager. It's back and front, so maybe two-pager needs assessment list, and it's intended to be just a nice consolidated list of different options for needs assessment, and just to help you think about what some of those techniques are. There are all kinds of resources about jumping in and understanding the methods for needs assessment. Again, some of this might go make it start to feel like, wow, this is a lot of work, and I don't really I want you to help you think about this in terms of how can you make it happen, digestible little chunks. But this one-pager was really intended to help capture a lot of the different methods that we're going to be walking through today, and that you may be already doing some of them. All right, and so talks about the different methods, and also the one takeaway from this one page I worked with Eduardo Gonzalez on creating this is just helping us to understand that when we work with others, through other organizations, that there's a greater opportunity for building in some diversity. If it's not just our heads that are planning something, but somebody else too in other organizations. All right, so, and one of the things that is on that list is the option for considering demographics. So I'm going to go to another page of questions and answers from you, and ask if you can raise your hand. Who has anybody here used demographics to better understand their community? So have you taken a look at race, gender, and ethnicity, different other kinds of resources that might help you understand who's in your community, what the youth ratios are, the agricultural demographics? And it looks like a few of you have your hand raised up right away. Super, thank you for that. And so then I'm going to ask you to chat in. What app or framework or information or website, what have you used, or what do you turn to regularly to help better understand the demographics in your community? U.S. Census, good. Census. Headwater site, okay, great. We're going to take a look at some of this stuff here in just a few minutes. U.S. Census data, policy map, Ag Census, county site, excellent. Farm Protection Plan, USDA Census, okay. So there's a lot of wonderful information that's out there. County Health Department, excellent. All right, Amanda, thank you. I was hoping that somebody would mention the Cornell PAD site, policy and demographics. Is that what the acronyms always get me? I use acronyms all the time, like all Program of us in Extension. Program on Applied Demographics. There you go. Ding, ding, ding. Kim gets the prize here. And that's a wonderful site that has things broken down by county, by township. So we'll take a look at the front page for that website here shortly. So good. All right. All right, and that's essentially what, we don't have a ton of time here this morning, but that's the website. And Amanda, thank you for sharing the link directly. I would encourage all of you to take a peek, look through here. And I have noted on the front page of the Cornell Program on Applied Demographics site, there's a little section called New York County Profiles. And those are there essentially for, they're for everybody, but they were created on behalf of Cornell Cooperative Extension for us to better understand what our counties, the breakdown looks like. They are based on the 2010 census, so the data is not super new, but again, just that dipstick just to help you understand a little bit more about what your community looks like, population, race, housing units, education, poverty. Some of that might help you describe when you know that your community has a need, when an RFP comes out and asks you to think about or apply on a particular topic. Being able to describe what your community looks like is super helpful. And again, it shows that you have done your homework. And the PAD site can help you do that, as well as these other sites as well. All right, so one of the reasons why we start to that it's important for us to understand the demographics of the communities that we work in are to help us know how to reach out in Extension beyond the people that come in the door. So you may have seen this model before. It's called the AIDA model. You may have heard me refer to it as the cone of influence. So that's what that model kind of looks like. They look very much the same. They say very much the same. The AIDA model, the AIDA is an acronym for awareness, interest, desire, and action. And the cone of influence that I use to describe the types of data that we collect for reporting. And in both cases, the reason is the same. Now let's see if I can get my little annotation to work here. There we go, there's an arrow. So one of the reasons why we want to understand the communities that we are in is to help us to understand how to reach new communities, right? And so in the cone of influence, we think about how are we going to reach them indirectly, how are our communication efforts going to go out. So being able to describe that to a funder, that we know who our communities are and we know how to reach them because we've been thoughtful about who our audience is really important. I mean, obviously, we're not going to reach everyone in the same exact way. Some people, you know, like we talk with staff here across the state, there's some counties where internet is, you know, is a little rougher to get it, you know, to reach everybody indirectly through social media. In other counties, that's the first place that they go. In the communities that they're working with, that might be the first place that they go because everybody is accessing information by cell phone. So again, understanding the community so that we know how to reach them indirectly, how to bring them to something. You know, if transportation is an issue in the communities and for the programs that you're working on, then understanding that about your audience in order for them to directly engage with you is going to be important. And being able to articulate that to your funders is very important as well. All right. Okay, so back to the AIDA model, just again, as we consider raising awareness, developing interest and desire and a call to action in people, understanding our communities is critical. Okay, so in part of that understanding our communities, we may come to the place where we don't know exactly how to, well, we may not have, there may be needs that are identified and we may not have an inroad to a particular community and organization. So let me ask you this question. Who has had success working with new communities, and what have you done to make that most successful? So I'm going to ask you to put your hands down. If you can put your hands down there. Yep. And if you can just chat in, how have you been able to reach out to serve a new community? Who is that community and how have you been able to reach out? Don't be shy. Okay, excellent. So for us, we've had much success starting relationships through school districts. You mean outreach methods? Oh, I sort of mean outreach methods, but I also mean, you know, as you consider a need, so maybe you get a request for an RFP comes out for an issue that you know that is, you know, super important, whether it's obesity prevention or maybe it's working with a particular community, but as Cornell Cooperative Extension, you may not have had success working in that area before. So, how do you reach new audiences outside of your genre job? No, I do mean within your job. So, and it's so a comment came in privately that said we've had much success starting relationships through school districts. So that's an example of what I mean. So if you have, there may be young people that you know don't have transportation or access to reach cooperative extension programs typically, but through a school district, we might be able to reach those young people because everybody, they have transportation to school, right? So working through the school districts is a way of mechanism of getting the educational outreach that cooperative extension has to an audience that we might not reach otherwise. Starts with sharing with community leaders. That's good. After school programs. Excellent. Okay. Anybody else? All right. So oftentimes when we talk about reaching new audiences, hold on a second, my chat has just gone away. There we go. Perfect. Got it back. Oftentimes when we talk about reaching new audiences, we talk about working through, or counties that have been super successful at reaching new audiences are working through partner and collaborating organizations. So, sometimes it's hard to, the big picture of reaching a diverse audience or a new audience fresh from the start for cooperative extension may feel a little bit too much, but working with other organizations works well. Okay, so from Lindsay, working with a wine and grape association, so working with other organizations, partners, collaborators will help us get our foot in the door, provide information, help our collaborators to share the information that we have available with a new audience without being able to start from scratch. So in an RFP and in a proposal, so writing about the other partners that we're working with, articulating how we're going to reach the needs of a particular audience is very, very helpful. Okay. So another thing that's on the needs assessment bulletin is extrapolating from existing studies. So using something that might be out there, and so one of the participants has mentioned reaching out to the health department. So I always think of the health department as a great source because oftentimes they have studied communities, have some statistics that might be out there that we want to be able to use as we're writing about an issue, a concern, and some local statistics, super helpful. There's a lot of resources and data sources that can help you to do that. So here you can see my arrow again. Health department reports, regional planning and development boards, and so these are all organizations that are in your community that if you, as you're considering your what you know about an issue, as you're considering doing your homework, reaching out to those collaborators and sharing what it is that you intend to do and asking what data they have available, asking if they'll be collaborators can help you better articulate what it is that the issue is, can help you show that you have done your homework, that you understand the need within your particular community, and can be very helpful. Okay, and then there's documenting needs, basically. So I'm going to ask you this question. Have you used a process to document social needs within your community around a big issue? So think about the area that you represent, topic that you represent, and if you can just raise your hand if you have a process that you use to help you better understand some of those big picture issues in your community. Okay, so I see Bonnie. Who else? Greg. All right, so this is just, and everybody's going to have a little bit of a different way of doing this. Rebecca? Anyone else? All right, and the second part of this question is, how have you done this? So, and I see some answers already. Spreadsheets for data collection, annual community assessment, okay. Learn, document, organize information, look for patterns, right? Focus groups, excellent. Okay, one-on-one meetings, surveys, journal responses at community meetings. I take a lot of meeting notes and keep them all in the same document. Attend community meetings and ask, advisory committee. Okay, excellent. So again, as I point out some of the stuff around needs assessment, what I hope that you're going to walk away with is recognizing, okay, I'm doing some of this, but maybe not realizing that you know, you have the language for understanding or even calling it a needs assessment. We're assessing needs so that we can be prepared for the next RFP around whatever issue that that you are working on. So and documenting social needs, you know, making note of these issues that pop up, be it at a meeting or through social media, local social media, local media. That's a process that will help you to be able to articulate to a funder that that something is of particular need and interest to the community that you work in. So great. Okay. So and here's some examples of just some, you know, documenting needs might mean holding on to some resources that provide some statistics and some monitoring process. Like I said, on the needs assessment on the web page that has some information about, you know, exact ways on you might want to document some social needs. All right, so let's look at service statistics. So what does that mean? You know, service statistics just relates to, you know, how you're serving your community right now. So again, if you put your hands down if you have your hand up, and then a hand up if answering the question, do you capture who comes through the door to your programs? And I bet all hands will go up on this one, or you're certainly thinking about it. Some of you know that I work on the reporting stuff, so so yeah, so lots of hands up. So please raise your hand, right?
And I think everyone knows on the participant list they can scroll down, because I'm not seeing a lot of activity at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
So,
well, you know, the hand, when your hand goes up, you go up to the top of the list. Did you know that? Yeah, thank you. That's we're still learning Zoom here. All right. So so a lot of us are capturing who comes through the door for programs, right? And so the second part of that question is, where can you find this data and how can it help you? So where do you find, you know, how do you reflect back on who has been coming in your door and like what the trends are and how can that help you? Sign-in sheets, excellent. All right, surveys, database, Bonnie, there you go. Anyone else? All right. So I always try to sell the usefulness of the reporting system, not just to report, but as a program development tool. Whether you're writing your local plan of work or writing a proposal, you can kind of look back, search back, and review reports and attendance catalogs of everything that you have had to offer and has been entered into the reporting system. So this is part of the business systems, the program development and reporting tool. So the URL for business systems is up there, but PD and R, many of you may have been involved in reporting recently, but you can look back, as I said, back all the way to, I think, 2007 if you wanted to see trends in your data, or, you know, you're just trying to document that, yeah, indeed, people are really interested in, you know, X. You know, so you might not see impacts from this participation data, it's just output data, but it will help you to document who comes to the door and for what particular issues. So you can look by program, you can look by search by event, so you can look at, you know, back at your race, gender, and ethnicity of who's attended programs over the past, you know, the past several years. But I think that this information can be super helpful, again, as you're doing your homework and just considering how you share with potential funders, you know, who your current audience is, who your potential audience is, and how you are going to reach them. Oops. Oh, geez. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. All right, so next we're on to focus groups or public forums. And I heard a couple of you mention, I saw a couple of you mention that you have used focus groups. So talk to me a little bit more about what does that look like for you? How do you use a focus group? Oh my goodness. Sensitive. It is sensitive. All right, well, I'll just keep chatting here a little bit. Okay, consent from the group when I ask if I can record a session and then ask 5 questions. Okay. All right, so you may have a committee group that you're looking for some specific information from and asking for consent from them. So focus groups are typically a direct connection to community groups. If you're writing a proposal, this is a great way to get just a group that you know is particularly interested in an issue together. The benefit of a focus group is that it's you're getting some interaction and dialogue amongst the group. Sometimes that can build collaborative spirit a little bit easier than some one-on-one discussions. So they can be super helpful in helping you to gather information, to again reflect back, share that you have really done your homework. There's all kinds of good resources about running a focus group and running a smooth focus group. Sometimes a focus group is just a small group, and it doesn't really take a lot of facilitation. But if you're working with a larger group, it may take some help to facilitate a focus group. All right, from Kaylin, I found that the hardest part in conducting a focus group is diverse recruitment. Any suggestions for creative outreach from the group? So I'm curious if anybody else out there has had that experience and want to share any suggestions with Kaylin. Bribe them with the offer of food. Food is always good. It really does bring people together, and it helps them feel appreciated. The other thing that I have found, Kaylin, is working through other agencies and organizations. So if you have an agency or an organization that has a diverse audience that they work with, they're much more likely to be able to represent the audience that they work with and they if it's a colleague that feels the trust and some confidence and comfort and working with you, you're going to get some real answers. So that is sometimes it can be tricky with a group of people that doesn't know each other to feel that trust and be able to really share what they're really thinking. And sometimes moving towards a one-on-one, especially if you're just getting to know people, sometimes that can work better. All right, we also have from Jessica, depending on location, I've had a lot of luck connecting to diverse members of communities through block captains or neighborhood group leaders. Excellent. Okay, so public forums is another way of gathering contact. All right, and conducting a survey. Okay, so anybody there who's conducted a preliminary survey or assessment to better understand an issue? So if you can raise your hand. All right, so a bunch of hands have gone up. All right, and then the follow-up is, how can this help you? So how can a survey help you to better assess or understand an issue? And I like the comment from JH954. Often it takes a road trip to see what a potential partner is doing and how they work and their main goals and see how to connect. Okay, so a survey helps you to hear from your target audience, and the information is really helpful in grant writing, so it might give you some statistics, right? So the process that I like to use, let's see if I'm pretty sure I have this somewhere in here, but yeah. Go on to my next slide. The process that I like to use is kind of what I call an interview process. So choosing just a handful of stakeholders that people that I trust and trust me to get their initial feedback around a particular issue. I try to think about that group of stakeholders as think through a diverse audience, whether it's geographically diverse or representing different audiences, but identifying a group of stakeholders and then interviewing them with a small list of open-ended questions. So starting with a process that's not necessarily a survey, but helping them to number one, know about the issue that I'm working on. Number two, helping me to really listen intently. So as I'm asking them those open-ended questions, each of them the same questions, I am documenting their responses so that over time in that process, I am able to review those responses and tease out the similarities. And so from that process, I can identify common themes and then develop a broader survey that can be distributed to a bigger audience so that we have some of those statistics. All right, so we worked through this process and a couple of things, just even here in Extension Administration. It's a process I've used locally in community groups that I work in as well. It helps me to like I said, kind of spread out, plant the seed to let other people know what it is that I'm working on. It helps them anticipate what's next and what are we going to be working on together, and make sure that the questions that I ask in a survey aren't from my own little head, but are a little bit more of a distributed process as well. So that's a nice summary, Jessica, but providing a better understanding of needs and developing goals. Good. Okay, so here's a couple of examples of some surveys that have been written by your peers, our colleagues out there in the system, to as they have assessed needs locally. So this is a farmers market producers survey. So Bonnie Collins, you can see your name on there. This is a survey that was used, and you may have something that you want to share about that to better help understand what farmers market producers are thinking and needing, right? The leveraging the local locavore movement. Smith Lever project worked through a multi-stage needs assessment to help survey and better understand the communities and the needs of of potential locavores out there and what it is that they wanted. So these oftentimes when we see what these needs assessments, we see surveys come out there, just kind of be on the lookout and to better understand, okay, well, that's what they're doing. They're helping to better understand what the need is so that they can seek some additional funding oftentimes. You see those come through, so. All right. All right, so another item that's on the bulletin for needs assessment is using resource inventories. So somebody mentioned big water or headwaters before. I think it was Bonnie. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if this might be a newer concept to some people. So raise your hand if you've used big data resources. I see a few hands that may be, there we go, a few more hands going up and a couple going down. All right, and if you want to share, what sources are you using? And so big data sources, what I mean are websites that kind of collect and connect a whole bunch of data so that you know, you're able to filter by particular needs that you have. A little bit bigger data sources typically than even the census.
Unmute.
I don't know, somebody has unmuted. There we go. Okay. Anybody want to share what sources are you using? So USDA data I see down there. I think Bonnie had mentioned a little bit earlier using the Headwater data. So a good place to find some of the resources for data tools is the Community and Regional Development Institute, or CARDI. And on their website, you'll find a list of data tools, including the Headwaters Economic Profile System, and there's some others on the list as well. Okay. And the benefit of those is that you can, you know, you can filter information by the resources that you're looking for. So I would just encourage you to, you know, if that's the kind of data that's going to help you to describe your issue better, to take a look. And there's some specific resources for different issues. So health and nutrition, ag and forestry. Okay. All right, Karen, I see, I'm not sure what PED-NSS is, but it looks like you have had some experience with that. Maybe if you want to describe if there's other nutrition educators on board that might find that helpful. If you want to take a couple minutes explaining what that is, that would be great. All right, so take some time and get to know the CARDI website, though. There are lots of great data maps and resources that are there that can help you. Okay. So I want to just, you know, even though a lot of our data collection and information is about knowing our audience, I don't know that we oftentimes spend a lot of time in that audience, you know, describing our audience or considering what our audience experience might be. And I think it's very helpful for you to, you know, whether it's through some of that dialogue that you have with a potential audience for a particular issue, or even just walking through what's the experience and what would the roadmap be for a potential audience member to be involved in program. What would motivate them to come to something that you have to offer? So I'm going to ask you first, have you used what you know about your audience to better understand what they are and what motivates them? You know, by that I mean, have you done more than just write about the issue? Raise your hand if you have actually really thought through your audience needs and motivations as you're writing a grant proposal. Excellent. And you know, what does that look like? So what have you done to help you think through what your audience experiences? So Amanda, Greg, Caitlin, Karen, Include audience in the process. Sure, that makes sense, right? So they're a part of that process of assessing the needs and understanding what their experience is. Great. So some of you know that I'm in an instructional design program right now for online learning, and you know, I've thought that that was probably the most interesting thing that I have learned about is considering not just writing about an audience and writing about that, you know, the needs and documenting needs, but including an actual dialogue of what the experience of an audience member would look like. And so that comes from it comes from understanding, really understanding the audience. Comes from discussions. It comes from like putting yourselves in their shoes. You know, considering and thinking about, like I said, transportation, motivation. You know, there's a lot of things that we know are good for people or good for a agricultural production, but how do we motivate other people to want to be interested and then change behavior? So I see also main issues and concerns. Would they be interested in additional activity, or would that be a burden for them, right? How do you get to that? You know, how can you get to that place where you know that they would be excited and you know that they would be able to access the information that you have available? Anybody else there? Okay, there we go, Karen. Pediatric Nutrition Surveillance System, PDSS, or PED-NSS, combines existing data on infants and children who visit public health clinics, routine care, nutrition education, supplemental foods. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Okay. Anybody else want to share the audience assessment? We have a few minutes, so I'm actually thinking I would like to share a short video. Is that okay?
Sure, I'll give it a try.
Okay, all right. We're going to give it a try.
And you wanted to go to the website too at the end.
Yes. All right, let's see. Optimize full screen video clip. And okay. All right. So we'll start here just to make sure that I get here, but staff site is where we keep all of our resources. So staff.cce.cornell.edu. So, you know, I always joke that this is a great tab to have on your homepage of whatever browser that you use. Just like your websites are intended for your audiences, our websites and extension administration are really intended for you, because our staff are primary importance to us. If you go down to the bottom of the units, you'll see organizational development and accountability. So that's Kim and I are part of the organizational development and accountability unit. All of the resources that we have to offer are here. Program planning and development has a list of program planning resources. All right. And assessing local needs. There's a link on the webpage for this webinar to assessing local needs, and you'll see some previous webinars as well as resources for any of the any of the methods of assessing local needs that you might be interested or want more information on. And you can of course always reach out to me as well. All right. The other thing that I wanted to show you. My screen is kind of cluttered with a lot of things right now. You can't see that. Okay, so I should be looking up at the big screen to figure this out. Okay. All right. but
Work
it's
with
not
them, work with their
opening.
mouse, right?
There we go. All right.
Aw.
All right, I'm just
Confident, comfortable, and safe.
start with, this is a project that we're working on right now over the course of the next year, just to set this up a little bit, around volunteer orientation. So this is a project and a presentation that I did as a part of one of the courses that I'm taking. But basically what I'm setting up here is a volunteer orientation proposal that that needs funding and support in order to move forward. So the process of the process of understanding the community and taking a closer look at who our audience is what I needed to focus on. So you can kind of see it here. So we won't watch the whole thing. I'm just going to start from the beginning. Okay.
Hi, I'm Celeste Carmichael, and I'm going to tell you about a resource that I'll be helping to design for orienting volunteers for CCE, the non-formal education organization that I work for. Each year, CCE works with over 45,000 volunteers in local learning centers across the state. And while there's a statewide policy that requires local onboarding of volunteers, there's not statewide instructional resources, and in many cases, there's not the local staff time available to host orientation. So it's really hard to do what this policy sets out to do. These factors combine to suggest that maybe there's a need for an organizational approach, doing something a little bit different. The intent of this policy is to help orient all volunteers to the mission, vision, and values of the organization, and also to help them know common practices to keep everyone safe. So it's important stuff. In preparing for this project, I reviewed literature and research, had some discussions with other staff, and reviewed how other national organizations onboard volunteers. All of these things pointed to creating a resource that would be a central onboarding spot for potential volunteers. And that resource sort of felt like it would look like and feel like a website. What you see here is a prototype that's based on the CCE public site and the content found on the American Red Cross volunteer page, a good example of intentional online learning design. We'll talk more about the prototype in a minute, but first let's take a look at the prime audience for this resource, potential volunteers. Research about volunteers indicates that most adults volunteer for a specific reason, and that their experiences as a volunteer help them decide whether to or not to continue volunteering with an organization. That information felt like it was very relevant in thinking through what this resource would look like and feel like. Research about volunteer motivations correlates well with what we know about adult learning theory. We want to give the learners as much control as possible in their learning and ensure that what's offered is not only meets our agenda, but it also is relevant to them. The goal of this resource is to build an experience that meets the requirements outlined in the volunteer policy. Additionally, because we know the relationship building is of interest to the volunteers and it's helpful for our staff, volunteers need to feel warmly welcomed and connected even in a digital environment, even in the very beginning stages. So we're going to take a look next at the profile of a potential volunteer. So this is Courtney and her daughter Emma. Emma's a high school freshman interested in going to vet school. Courtney is interested in getting Emma involved in 4-H because she knows that 4-H has a connection to Cornell University. And Cornell University is where Emma wants to go to school. So Courtney is completing the volunteer onboarding process because she would like to become a volunteer and encourage her daughter to get involved. Courtney finds the Volunteer with Us link in a simple Google search. So let's take a look at what, if we were to map out this process, what it might look like.
Okay, and I'm going to stop here. But what I really wanted to point out is, so this process of developing in this case, really it's a proposal for something that we're working on here. The process included, ensuring that we had some of our facts and figures correct. doing our homework on who our audience would be and some of the policies that were relevant and in place right now, researching motivation about our potential audience, in this case, potential volunteers, and then mapping out what, and this is the piece that I really wanted to get to right here. What would be the steps for the audience for this, this process? What would be the steps for them to get involved in something that we have offered? So I want to encourage you to think through that process, whoever your potential audience is for the proposal that you're writing. What are the steps that they would, become motivated? What gets them to come to your door? How do you encourage their involvement all the way to the point of their behavior change, which is typically what we're trying to reach out to. So that's that. Thanks for indulging me a little bit there, and I apologize for sharing this one, but I thought it was also an opportunity for us to plant the seed a little bit that this is something that we're working on here in Extension Administration. Thanks, Bonnie. All right, so let me go back to sharing my slides. Zoom share, and there we go. All right, so that is the most of the content that I have for us here today. Just want to reflect back on that one more time that assessing needs is kind of part of that. It is part of the program development model and the process. So when we think about, what's a good way to plan a proposal, it's the same thing that we would do if we're planning a good program. So stepping back to really understand a program and involve other people in that process, that's the bottom part of it. And that model, whether, regardless of whether you're coming from education or community development or ag development, assessing needs and analyzing the situation is a common theme that you'll see in any of the kinds of development models and process. And I'll go back to the needs assessment bulletin. I think this is a nice consolidated view of different options. Again, I hope you walk away with thinking that a good way of doing your homework is approaching this from a three-legged stool, or approaching it from a variety of ways to basically understand who your audience is, what the need is, and getting some good statistics so that you can write about a program. And then there's just our website in follow-up, and my email address, and Kim's as well. So that's what I have, Kim.
All right, that's fantastic. You're right on time, getting lots of thank yous in the chat box. Appreciate everyone attending, and Celeste, this was a fantastic presentation. We'll have resources on the course page.
Yes, they're already up there. Yep.
And the slide handout will be
up there
also.
Yep.
So the link we shared earlier of the course page for this specific webinar has all the resources that you need. So thank you all for engaging and interacting. We had a very busy chat box, and that's fantastic. Lots of raised hands. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful day.